Hello, I'm Razor, and welcome to my presentation on a feature that Far West needs soon and how it needs to do it right. Before I talk about that, though, I need to first give some context as to why this feature is needed in the first place. And that brings me to this. The current state of the player base, at least in terms of numbers, as of June 19th, 2026. I ripped this straight off of SteamDB like right now, and looking at it, you can see that the game has had a really high peak on its release day and the following weekend, but over time, it has just completely simmered out to a small fraction of its original player base. And the thing is, that's not always a bad thing, especially if Far West is a game that's sold as a product. Because games that are sold as a product, sure, they want to deliver a quality product, but they don't care too much beyond that initial sale. That's the whole point of selling it as a product. It's a one-time purchase. You buy it, you get what is listed, and that's it. Nothing more that you have to pay for, nothing more that you expect. And if Far West is a game sold as a product, well then, it's had its high, it's had its upside, it's had its massive sale. Shouldn't have to worry about anything else. But at the same time, if it's a game sold as a service, a live service game, if you will, then things are a little different because player retention, something which the game is currently very weak at, becomes a lot more important because when you add in new content, when you add in new monetization models, you want to retain the players that you initially got so that, you can make more money or get more goodwill, just generally have the players engage with the new stuff that you're making. And if Far West is a live service game, it becomes very important to focus on and maintain your current player base. And so that begs the question, what is Far West? Is it a product or is it a service? And currently, it's hard for me to sort of put it in one or the other. I feel like on the spectrum between the two, it's somewhere in the middle. Because on the surface, it's a straightforward product. It's a one-time purchase. There are no additional costs or any other revenue models. It's pretty straightforward. But at the same time, it has so many design decisions that feel reminiscent of other live service games. Think like redeemable codes, seasonal content, replayability is literally on the top of the freaking roadmap for the game. Not to mention that even if it is a product, it's a product in development. It's an early access game, which means player attention becomes important not just for making money or getting goodwill, but also to have people play your game, engage with the new features, give feedback, and report bugs. It's an active player base is what keeps an early access game healthy and in progress. And then finally, the last aspect, and also the main focus of the video, weekly challenges, or weeklies. People call them a lot of different things. Some people call them dailies. In business lingo, they're called incentives. In game design lingo, they're called hooks. I'm going to be calling them weeklies because it feels simple. Now, it's already mentioned on the roadmap. It's something that the developers are going to work on, but the point of this video, the point that I'm trying to make, is that I want them to bring it up to the priority list way sooner than wherever it is currently, because this is how you're going to be retaining your player base. Weeklies are a very, very effective way to engage players. It gives them a very good reason to consistently come back to the game and test it out. And if there are new features in the game, it allows them to test them, engage with them, give their feedback. It's just a very easy way to make sure that people keep coming back to your game after the initial playtime. That being said, when done wrong, it can be really frustrating or boring for the people that engage in weeklies, depending on their design. And in the worst cases, it can even be predatory. It can prey on people's emotions or the sense of FOMO, and just overall create a very unhealthy environment. So, what I'm trying to say is not only does Far Far West needs to do this feature as soon as possible to retain the potentially lost players since launch, but they also need to do it in a way that's effective, but not frustrating and not predatory. And you don't have to take my word for it. There are people who have done research on this stuff. There's literally a paper on this right here. There's a reference if you want to look into it. In fact, this paper is actually really interesting because they talk a lot about intrinsic versus external motivations and the sort of gaps in between, and how sort of dailies and weeklies tend to prey on those little gaps and sort of convince players to keep coming back to certain games. Also, this paper is mostly qualitative in nature. They're sort of interviewing people and getting their perspectives on how weeklies and dailies affect them and their gaming experience. But that's its whole thing. I'm not here to discuss this paper. I'm here to talk about weeklies specifically for Far Far West. But if you want to read it, this is the reference. Now, in order to talk about how Far Far West can do weeklies well, I feel like we should talk about the aspects of a weekly's design specifically that affect player engagement and their levels of frustration. And I've divided these into 3 categories: ease, reward, and availability. So let's take this one step at a time. Looking at ease, the first point, how easy or hard the challenges are. Now, when you're making a weekly, the ideal version of a challenge is something that is not too difficult for the average player, but also not too easy for the average player. If it's too easy, it becomes tedious, it becomes a chore. If it's too difficult, it becomes frustrating, it feels like you're banging your head against a wall. You need to achieve that flow state, if you know about that, where player skill meets the intended challenge in a way that creates a perfect linear diagonal line. And of course, it's not easy to do that for all players because people are of differing skill levels. It's why Far Far West itself has many different difficulty modes, going from easy all the way up to nightmare. But ideally, you want to make sure that the weekly at least reaches the majority of the player base in terms of the challenge that it offers. How long they take. Weeklies, just don't make them take too long. Of course, you shouldn't make them too short either, like a 2-minute or a 5-minute login reward, because that turns into chore territory. It's too easy, it takes too little time, it's just there's no point, because then people are not actually engaging with the game. But at the same time, if you make your weeklies take, say, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, then the people who tend to get the most benefit from weeklies, which are people who don't always have too much time to play in a week, they get left out because, not everyone has 8 to 10 hours to spare in a week just to play video games. So it's good to be considerate of that and make weeklies in such a way that they're designed to, at most, take 1 short session's worth of your game. Now, is the difficulty varied or stable? Variance is nice. Variance is interesting. It makes it fresh. It keeps the game fresh whenever you log into it. That being said, you don't want too much variance, because then it becomes unpredictable as to how long or how easy or hard the game is going to be. And that messes up the people who say are trying to dedicate half an hour to an hour on a weekend to sort of play the game, and then they log in and then they realize that the weekly that they're about to do takes 5 hours, and they're fuck. That's time wasted. So the variance should be a little, but not too much. And now, is it too different or too similar from the main gameplay loop? Look, I know people want to keep things spicy, they want to make dailies and weeklies interesting, but if you make a whole new game mode for your dailies or weeklies or any other challenge that you make, you are essentially risking or like taking a gamble on whether people are gonna like it or not, and that's gonna affect whether they engage with it in the future, as opposed to just giving them the already existing game, which you already know that they like because they purchased it, didn't refund it, and are engaging with the weekly system to see what kind of rewards there are. So just give them the existing gameplay loop. If you want to be creative and make something new, just make a different game and see if that's successful with the same crowd. But that's that last point's my personal opinion. Um, Reward. How worthwhile is the reward? This is again a surprising balance that a developer needs to maintain, because of course, saying that the reward not being worthwhile enough is easy to say. Like, yeah, you obviously have to make it worthwhile. But if you make it too worthwhile, that can be an issue as well. Like, if it's like a really, really good reward, then what happens is that the people who miss out on the reward, even if it's in rotation constantly, if it's very significant, people who miss out on it will feel bad. Because it's like, oh, they had to put a certain amount of effort to get so much reward, but they just couldn't do it because they didn't have the time. And then maybe their friends who did have the time are now way ahead in progression because, they got the reward. So it has to be somewhere in between where it's like worthwhile, but not so worthwhile that a person feels like they have to drop everything else for it. Now, is it easy or impossible to obtain without the weeklies? I feel like a healthy weekly reward should be something that is not necessarily impossible to obtain without weeklies, but hard, so that there is like a proper incentive to do them and they're not just like any other mission that you have, except a little bit more special. But don't make it impossible, because if you have a completely unique reward for weeklies, then it's like, again, it goes back into the territory of, it becomes rare, and it's just like, when you make something rare, you play on people's FOMO. Don't make it too plentiful either, because then again, that creates a situation where it's not really worth it, because you can just get the same thing from playing the game regularly, and if you're not incentivized to engage with the weeklies, then why play it? Why play the game? But yeah, the entire reward section all kind of boils down into, do players feel bad for missing out on it? If the answer is yes, you need to tone it down. If the answer is no, you can keep making it like better and better and better and better until this answer turns into a sort of maybe, and then either stop or tone it back down a little. But just make sure that whatever reward you keep, people don't feel bad for missing out on it. I think that's the most important takeaway to take from how to design a reward for weeklies. Now, availability. How frequently do these challenges rotate? Make it consistent, make it normal, and just make sure that people don't feel like they've been hit sideways when one day you're like, oh, the weeklies are no longer available, or like, oh, the weeklies have been changed out for this. Sort of commit to a system wherein people can have some sense of predictability, and they can organize their schedule a bit better, or sort of have regular expectations, because shit gets crazy in life. Stuff happens, and when things are already chaotic enough, it's nice to have something stable to come back to, and weeklies tend to be that. So stability is really important for this one. Are they limited time or always in rotation? Again, always in rotation is the best. Technically, limited time can incentivize more people to come back, because oh my god, it's limited time, it's only happening like once a day in a week, or twice a week in a month, or whatever. But like, it plays on people's FOMO. It's not healthy, it's not fun. It's like, it's gonna give people a bad rep about the game, and it's gonna make a lot of people want to stay away from it, because you're psychologically trying to manipulate them. And weeklies, don't do streaks for weeklies or dailies or any of these challenges, please. Streaks are a horrible, malicious way to make people form habits and make people say like, hey, if you constantly every day at least log into our game or do this or that, then you're going to be rewarded for it, so keep doing it. And it sucks, not just because like it unconsciously make people form habits without their consent, but when those habits potentially break because something may happen in the person's life, they feel all the worse for it, and it becomes all that more difficult to get back into the game because they lost their streak. It feels like shit. Why would you want to come back? So just don't do streaks. These are all the aspects, and each individual, I guess, sub aspect of the aspect. And in order to sort of go through these a little bit better, I've also taken a few examples of good, bad, and ugly design of each of these, in existing games. First one being, an example of good Weeklies design in Space Marines 2. They have stratagems which rotate both daily and weekly, and they reward you with something called accolades, which is a special currency that is completely unique to the system and is used to buy either heroic weapons or special cosmetics and just, stuff that you wouldn't be able to otherwise get when playing the main game mode. Now, I like the difficulty aspect of it because it has the standard difficulty, the normal missions, which are set to the third out of the 6 difficulties in the game, which I feel like is a healthy balance. It's a place which is not too difficult, but also not too easy. It's somewhere where I think the average player base can engage with and have fun without completely falling asleep. But they also have the hardest difficulty in hard mode, which, ramps it up to the 6th difficulty in the game, the highest difficulty, which is absolute. And I like that because it also acts as a sort of end game for players who've done almost everything else in the game. It's a nice way to engage all parts of the community, both the casual players as well as hardcore players. But these difficulties don't change. They're really stable. I mean, there are modifiers that can vary the gameplay so that some difficulties feel way harder than others and some missions feel way easier than others, but overall, you can expect that every week this mission is going to be of substantial difficulty and this mission is going to be of nightmare difficulty, and nothing much is going to change. And all of them are relatively short duration. Each mission is as long as a regular mission would be. And it's not more complicated than that. You can tackle these however you want, in whatever order you want, and you'll get the rewards accordingly. Speaking of unique, of course, you can't get them outside of weeklies, which I did say is not the best, but it's nice. Again, it gives good incentive, but it's also plentiful. They're not like being too stingy with it. If you do the weekly ones, then you get like 150 to 200, which for context, most of the items that you can buy with accolades cost anywhere between, I think, like 300 to 400 accolades. So, they give you a lot per week, which also, makes them useful since, you can buy unique things with them, like cosmetics or weapons. But also, you don't feel bad for missing out on them because, they're so plentiful. If you miss out on them one week, then you're going to get them the next week. But at the same time, it's not like overly plentiful to the point where you feel bad for missing out on them. It's just like just enough to where it's like, oh, if I do one normal tier stratagem like twice in 2 weeks, I'm gonna get the one thing that I want from the accolade shop. And if I end up doing maybe the dailies, I could buy another thing sooner. If I end up, doing the hard version or getting carried through it or anything of that sort, then I can buy whatever I want in 1 week itself. It's a nice system. And as for availability, weekly and daily, always in rotation, no streaks. It's a good system. It's not perfect, but it's certainly a good system, and it rewards players for engaging with the game as it's meant to be, while also adding a little bit of spice here and there. Bad weekly design, Dark Tide. It's one of my favorite games of all time, but God does it have many faults, and one of them is the fucking Sire Milk's contract. These reset once a week, and you get 5 per character, which means, depending on the number of characters you have, which can go all the way up to, I believe, 9, you can have up to 45 contracts to complete in a week. Adding on to the fact that each of these contracts, when you complete 5 per character, you get a bonus 1,000 of the currency that's offered for each of these contracts, which is Sire Melt's coins or doc. I forgot the exact name because honestly, I don't do these. They're tedious. They can be annoyingly hard. Like killing 6 monstrosities is not that bad. You get into like one havoc mission, or find like a 3 wedge, or even just doing like regular missions, you will kill 1,000 monstrosities. But picking up 16 grimoires of scriptures, which takes like a minimum of 6 missions. Also, adding on to the fact, complete 8 missions, complete 6 missions with no player deaths. And this is for an individual character, by the way, which means that for multiple characters, it's going to take you hours in a week to do all of them. Like, it's too much variation. It's like, complete 6 missions with no player deaths. It's not just your death, it's the player deaths for the entire team. No one has to die. Which means this is like not even up to you, it's random, depending on who you get paired with, unless you have friends to play with. But good luck convincing your friends to play this stupid ass game. But okay, we have all this, but surely the reward might be worth it, right? It's not. It's unique. And it is plentiful, which is, not a bad thing. But it's not useful because in no way do these coins really play a part in the crafting system for the weapons in this game. They used to be good because they offered a way to get high-level weapons back when customizability wasn't very good in the game. But now it is. And so you go to the shop and you're just like, well, what's the thing that it can uniquely offer? And it's like, you can roll for curios, I guess. Yay! Curios, which make up like 2% of most builds. Like, I mean, I'm not saying they're not important, but it's like they're not important enough to grind this, that's for sure. And not to mention, again, you have to do all of the contracts per character to get the full bonus. And if you really want to grind it out, you'd have to do it for each character. But at the very least, in terms of availability, there are regular weekly rotations and no streaks. So it's not all bad. It's frustrating, it's tedious, it's not worth engaging with, but it's not predatory. Unlike this design. Now, I have not taken any particular game for this one because, not to brag, but I don't engage with games that have really shitty predatory weekly systems. So it was hard for me to find one, but a classic example that I came online after a bit of searching is, of course, Candy Crush, because, man, boomers like being exploited. But basically, in this weekly design, it's easy, again, to the point of tedium, to the point of feeling like a chore. It's extremely short. You just log in. So, there's no difficulty aspect to it, really. But the reward is really high. It's limited time. It's usually a premium reward, something that you often have to pay for, but you otherwise get for just logging in. It's rare. It's unique. You feel bad to lose it. Not to mention, it's daily, which means, they're basically saying we want to be part of your day every single day. We're limited time, this is a premium thing, so you better not lose it. And if you keep doing it every day continuously, you make a streak, so you better form that habit. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to let my emotions get the better of me, but I really, really, really hate this weekly design, if you couldn't tell. I think it's really predatory, I think it's really harmful. I feel like any game that does this is just being malicious on purpose. And I really, really hope when Far Far West looks at this design, they're not like, oh, let's try this. I hope the Evil Raptor looks at this and they're like, ew, no, never, please. But it's nice to talk about examples, but I think it's also important to talk about exactly how Far Far West can go about this, at least give sort of like broad framework or a suggestion, which is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to give a perfect solution, but I'm going to give my idea as to how weekly should be designed in this game. If you disagree with it, that's fine, that's fair. Leave a comment below as to like how you would change it or whether you'd want the feature at all or not. I'd love to engage and talk about this, honestly, because I don't know if you can tell, but I feel pretty passionately about this. I feel pretty passionate about the subject. So let's start with the ease aspect of weeklies in Far Far West and what I'd like to see. You're immediately going to notice that I've taken a lot of notes from the Space Marines 2 aspect in terms of ease. But what I'd really like is set difficulties in either hard, which I feel like is the average difficulty that most of the players play at. If I'm wrong, the developers have the data, they should just take the difficulty that most players play on. And added on to that, they should also have nightmare versions of those same missions because, again, it'll not only act as a way to engage the whole player base, but also sort of give an end game for people who've done everything else. Now, it's not a bad thing to make the difficulty of the weeklies completely customizable, like most missions in the game, where you can just choose between one of the 5. But the thing is, and this is a constant quote you'll hear in game design, is when you give players complete freedom, they will optimize all the fun out of the game. And of course, the easy answer to this is just, if you're not having fun with it, then just bump up the difficulty. But I'm not here to talk about something where it's like players have to make concessions to make the feature better. I want it to be good as it is. And to make it good as it is, just keep it in set difficulties. It is an option. You can do it. Maybe you can have scaling rewards as you bump up the difficulty, but I feel like just having those set ones makes it better because at the bare minimum, someone who wants to engage with the weeklies will have to play on hard and they can't completely sleep through it. They'll have to bring a build that they know they can win with. Or try really hard with a build that's completely not optimal. As for duration, I feel like there shouldn't be more than 2 to 3 weekly missions. Anything longer, anything more, or anything longer, anything that's going to take more than like an hour or 2 hours is going to push away people who generally don't have the time to grind out the game. You want to be considerate for the people who can only spend like an hour at most in a week for the game. Now, I also feel like mission modifiers are a cool concept for weeklies, both negative and positive ones. The game already has plenty of negative modifiers whenever you interact with the wishing well. For example, you can bump up the game speed, have tornadoes around, falling meteors, or even turn the game into nighttime version where everything's dark and spooky and scary. You can also have positive modifiers, like, maybe there's a constant, like, I don't know, acid rain that keeps affecting enemies every so often, or maybe your horses move like twice as fast. Just things to spice up the gameplay, vary it up, make it interesting. If you have any other mission modifier ideas, put them down in the comments. I have several. God, I have like a whole page's worth. But that's for ease. Now, for the reward for weeklies in Far Far West, XP tickets already are in the game, and I feel like they're the best possible reward you can have. They're rare because the only other way to get them is through the prestige system, but they're not completely irreplaceable. Like, you can just grind out XP the normal way. So you're not missing out on anything important by not getting these XP tickets, but they're certainly useful. They, like, fast track your progression by a lot. Especially now that they've bumped up the levels you get per XP ticket from 3 to 5. And not only that, they're literally the most valuable and perfect reward for someone who doesn't have the time to grind out the game's progression. It lets them engage with all the aspects of the game without having to dedicate like dozens of hours to it. It's, it allows for a wider player base. It's a good reward, just use that. If you can make your own reward, but I feel like if this already exists, may as well use it. That being said, don't give too many, don't give like 10 to 20 of them, because then, again, it's going to reach a point where it feels bad to miss out on a weekly, but also don't give too few, like 1 to 2 weekly tickets as well, because then it's pointless. You can just earn that XP by like doing a regular mission. So I feel like, for me personally, the perfect number lies somewhere between 3 to 5 XP tickets per week, or maybe per mission, per weekly mission. Of course, you can disagree, and this is not like a hard-coded, calculated number that I came up with, but just like a general range that I felt was right. So, might need some tuning there, but not too many, not too few. That's the general idea. As for availability, this one's pretty straightforward. Just keep a regular rotation, keep them available throughout the week, put them on the sheriff's board. It seems like the perfect place. Just interact with the sheriff and boom, a whole pop-up comes up with like the available missions that you have. Make sure a randomized set of weekly missions is always ready for the next week. Hell, put it on the system clock if you have to. Deep Rock Galactic has its rotating mission set to the system clock. Dome Keeper has its seasonal events set to the system clock. It's a very I've seen it in a lot of games. I don't know if it's easy to do, but if it's an option, do it because it feels very consistent and nice. You don't want to give players unpredictability by saying like, oh, these weeklies aren't available now. Or like, hey, this thing that you've sort of like always been dedicating your time to once a week, yeah, well, we're removing it. Like, screw your consistency. And most importantly, don't attach like special limited time stuff or seasonal rewards to the weeklies. Make those separate. Keep the weeklies straightforward. You can make like another separate weekly mission, I suppose, or like a seasonal mission, I suppose, in the same board, which is like, oh, you do this and that, you get like a cool costume or a cool hat. But keep the weeklies consistent. Consistency is key. Consistency will keep players. Consistency will make them happy. At least in terms of availability. And yeah, that's the design. That's what I've thought of. Of course, Evil Raptor has their own ideas in mind, I'm sure, for this, and whatever they have, I hope, and I want to be sure that is going to be healthy for the game in the long run. And yeah, if anyone from Evil Raptor is watching this, I don't know how, but thank you for making Far Far West. I really like this game, if you can't tell, and I want it to succeed, and I want to contribute to that in any way that I can. And I just wanted to convey, like, to me, why a weekly challenges feature is important to be prioritized and the way it should be done. And this video felt like the perfect way to do it. But of course, whatever the devs have in mind, I'm sure it'll come out well. And if you're not from Evil Raptor, but you're just watching the video for the sake of watching it, thanks. I hope it was insightful in some way. If you agree or disagree with me, that's fine. If you have your own ideas about it, that is cool as well. Just write something down below in the comments, and yeah, I'd like to talk about it more. I don't know if you could tell by the length of this video, but I really like talking about games. So yeah. I don't know how to do intros, so yeah, I'm just gonna say bye and move on. So yeah, bye.